Hey, babe. Hello, all, and welcome to the Affluent Marriage Podcast. You're listening to one financial coach and one educator talk about living a rich and full marriage through generational wealth building principles, authentic two-way communication strategies, and everything in between to become a couple that lives in love and walks in wealth. Your legacy begins here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Do you know what movie that's from?
No. What
The
movie
Truman
is it?
Show. But I love it because you never know when someone's listening,
know
right?
when
So good
someone's
morning,
listening.
good afternoon, good evening, and good night to you.
Yeah, wherever you are right now. I hope you're having a good one.
Kim, we got hooked up this week. We got blizzest.
We sure did.
A good friend of ours just so happened to have, this friend of ours has children, but they're about a year or so older than our children. So
Our oldest. Older than our oldest.
That is true. But as she receives, well, let me just say this. So
Okay.
here is like a pro parenting tip. All right.
This is a big
This
tip.
is monumental. Okay. I need you to go out into the world and make friends. I know I just lost like half
Oh
of
my
you right
gosh,
there
scandal.
because I'm asking you to be social. But if you can make friends with a parent, all right, who has children that are about a year older than yours, then what's going to happen is when that child grows out of their clothes, they're going to be like, hey, my daughter, my son just grew out of all these clothes. I have all this extra stuff. We got to restock. You know, are you in need of 4T or 5T or whatever size it is that your kid's in now because they're a year younger? And your answer is
Yes. it is.
absolutely yes. You got to be a gracious, generous receiver, right? So we're all about building wealth, right? You can't build wealth if you spend your wealth, right? You can't be a millionaire if you spend your millions because then you're just broke with a
Spend
million.
it on things that are not necessarily going to build you more wealth. The thing is, like, we do this often, right? We have a group of friends, our kids are around the same age. This particular person she just always is purging her house, and she always comes up with more cute clothes, cute like princess dresses, so like both of the girls can play with them. But I feel like this is a flex, right? We've always been surrounded by people who have kids who are around the same age, and they will just be like, do you want it? And I'm like, sure. And I'll do the same too. When we're done, my sister has kids that are a child because they're younger. My sister has a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So my girls, like, we all share. It just goes all the way down to Zyla. But anyway, yeah, there's just so many ways that you can just, like, you know, when you're done with something, give it to somebody else.
Right.
Now, this will only last for, how long do you think this is going to last? Because I know someone's listening and going, oh, just wait till they're this, you know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, I guess once the children start, I'm going to use the term like caring about like their appearance. But here's the thing about our children is that they wear uniforms to school. So that doesn't really matter to them. But I feel like for me, and I don't know what it was for you, maybe it's different for girls and boys, but it was probably like around middle school when I started caring.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, I want to look good for girls. You know what I mean? I
For
did.
me, because that was...
Well, I met you in 8th grade. All right. So there was still, I still got to live a
6th
wild and
and 7th.
crazy life, you know.
6th and 7th grade, you got to go hang out
my
with all those
years-
girls.
My years of being a bachelor were 6th and 7th
He
grade.
did have a couple girlfriends, because by the time we got together in high school, we didn't go to the same middle school or high school, because we definitely wouldn't have met or crossed paths, or I wouldn't have liked him.
We
I
had
don't know.
two different social groups.
We did. We were just different. But anyway, I feel like I did have a couple of girlfriends that came to my high school for whatever reason, and they were like, "Oh, you go out with Daniel?" I went to a dance with him, and I'm like, "Oh my God." And I got all really emotional about it. I was like 14. What were you doing at 12 and 13? I don't know.
Right.
But
So
apparently, you know, stole their heart. But anyway, all that to say, yeah, I just feel like it's a really great flex that this person literally every single time that I'm like, oh, I need to go get Sophia some more
she's
shorts.
incredible.
And I'm like, oh, I should go get some more shorts. Oh, and I need to make sure I
Love
get some
me some
stuff
her.
prepared for next summer or next fall for uniforms. And then here comes Trisha. I have bags. Do you need some for your girls? And I'm like, oh my gosh, Trisha. And
yes.
it's all the stuff that I need that I was about to go out and get. And I'm like, I don't know why I forgot. Like, oh yeah.
Right. And then you just figure out what your gaps are and you're like, all right, I just need this one item or this two items, and you go grab that. And
Yeah.
you've spent like nothing, right? And the other thing you can do is you can take the clothing that doesn't work for you and take it to a thrift store. Like we have something called Once Upon a Child.
Find yourself a Once Upon a Child. If you don't know what it is, look it up. They're independent stores, but what they do is it's just like recycling your clothing, especially for kids. So if you know a mom who's in the area, a mom who is trying to find clothes for her kid, a mom who, whatever, it doesn't matter. This area, this place is like the best because what you do is you take clothes that are gently used, that your kid has outgrown. You go to this Once Upon a Child. They'll give you cash. So if you've heard of Plato's Closet, it's very similar, except Plato's Closet is for adult clothes. But this Once Upon a Child is for kids, and they'll pay you either in cash or they'll give you credit towards their store. And everything in there is, secondhand or gently used. So you're really able to get a lot of the staple stuff that, again, my kid, like for example, my youngest is in daycare. She's going to mess up those clothes anyway. She's going to get them filthy. I don't care if she has the nicest, newest thing for daycare. When it comes to Easter, when it comes to going to a nice, vacation or whatever, sure, I might get some new stuff. But when I'm talking about my kids' like clothing budget, it's not that big because of that exact reason.
And we've been doing this for years. Like, this has been an incredible,
since they've been born,
privilege and gift that we've had these last few years. But it's all because we made some friends, So it kind of made me think about my childhood too. Like, do you think our parents did this as well? Like, do you think our clothes were just like the stuff that we were so excited about and those shirts that you loved as a kid? And I had all those like 90s striped shirts, you know what I'm talking about? That had like the pastel colors or whatever. The greens and the pinks and stuff. Yeah. I mean, how many children wore that shirt before me? It's like Sisterhood of the Traveling 5-2 dress.
Like that's sustainability. If you're a green person, if you like for your if you're into the, making sure that you're recycling and sustainability for clothing, like this is not a big deal. Like share your clothes. If it's new or if it's gently used and there's no holes in it and your kid fits it, just take it. Like it's not going to be that big of a deal. So I'm a big proponent of sharing clothes when the kids are young. I get that we'll have to like make some adjustments when she gets into middle school, but as long as she doesn't care, because she gets excited. She got so excited when she probably saw those bags.
Oh my goodness. Yes, she was. She was through the roof.
Clothes.
She wanted to go through them. And I was like, no, babe, I need you to go to your room because we don't always keep everything. We look through it first and I don't want her to see the stuff that she's going to fall in love with. And we're like, no,
not our style.
That ain't for you.
Yeah. So that's what we got.
That is our little wardrobe. Pro parenting tip there, right? Don't spend your money if you don't have to. Make some friends along the way.
Or just go to Once Upon a Child, not a thrift store. So it's different than a thrift store.
Okay.
Because it is, they only take things that are like in good condition. So they can't have like holes and like whatever. Like it's been inspected, so to speak. So I feel like it's kind of like a level above the thrift store. I like the thrift store too, but a level above the thrift store.
Right. So we'll go there and get our cash value for that and buy clothes there. And then what they don't take, we'll just go ahead and put in a donation bin or box and give it to someone in need.
That's right.
So that's what we do. So think about that.
Pro tip.
All right. Last pod, Kim, was episode 14.
It was, dude. We're almost at like the second decade mark.
We're almost at the next decade mark. So
it's insane.
Last pod, if you are a part of Graham Fam.
Woot woot. Shout out to our subscriber.
We talked about building trust.
Yes.
With money, right? Building trust with your spouse around money. If you're not a part of Graham Fam, then your last episode, why aren't you first and foremost?
So good.
You had an episode on Fun Day Monday, and we talked about the safe place around money, surrounding money, the safe place talk around money.
Yes. Can I tell you a win that you might not know about our subscribers?
Yes, I want to know about this win.
So our subscribers are so amazing because we get messages from them. And she is starting to talk to her husband more as a result of listening to our podcast, which I love. And she's just doing some crazy stuff, man. People are like starting to like do some big decisions with their finances, starting to pay off debt, put some stuff into savings, and really starting to change their lifestyle because they're starting to have better conversations around money. And so I just feel like that's really the point, the goal of our podcast is to do that, to start conversation, to create different perspectives around finances. And, if that's what you're able to do by listening to this, then
That's incredible.
That's all we want.
I love that. Can I tell you about another subscriber?
Yeah.
So they just listened to episode 7, which is about like, charitable giving and all that.
Yes.
And how cool that, because this kind of is like our passion project, and we are trying to help people, right? That's the whole point of this. We want people to learn and grow surrounding their finances. And another one of our subscribers listened to episode 7 and they're like, you know what? I'm going to actually become a Graham Fam member and subscribe and, help you guys out because this is your passion project. And in doing that, they're going to help others, right? Because that's going to give us the resources that we need to push this further along, to move the needle.
Yes. Ooh, I have another one.
Win.
We should have a Graham win.
Win. All we do is win, win, win.
We had several people or some people message us and say that they started their high yield savings accounts.
Heyo.
Started their high yield savings funds, and then other people, because they were talking about the episode, went to other people and they started their high yield savings accounts.
That's incredible.
So guys, we are doing something to change the fabric of the just changing the conversation around finances. Instead of it being so taboo that we talk about it, like, no, let's really talk about it. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. And if we're able to help foster those conversations and create, different, mindsets around it, that's all we want. That's the mission.
Right. I love those wins because in all of those, there was like communication there. Don't keep us a secret.
Please don't.
Right. Please tell people about us, right? Share us with your friends, share us with your family, because we know the value that we offer. We know the value that we bring, and we know that we can help people, but you can't help someone if they don't know about you.
Exactly. And don't forget, we're on YouTube as well. So if you have someone who's like, I'm not really into podcasts, but I do like YouTube, shoot them our YouTube channel, Affluent Marriage Pod. Same place, same name. All those platforms.
Or any listening platform.
Any listening platform, because we want to just be able to help you. And if this is we just want to be able to be in as many different platforms as possible.
Sure.
Orifices. Oh, but never mind. I don't want to say anything else.
We want to be in your ears.
We want to be in your ears.
That's right. Hey, you know what else we talked about last pod?
What?
I wanted to give people an update. Last pod, we talked about our very first eviction.
Daycare.
I never thought my first
like,
eviction
what?
would be my daughter's eviction.
Yes.
So not us, we didn't get evicted,
No,
and we didn't evict anybody, but
my daughter didn't get evicted.
But our first eviction is our daughter's daycare. So just to let everyone know, she started her first week this week, and she is thriving. She's doing really well. She's making a lot of friends. She loves it there.
She's so happy.
There's like a fish tank in the lobby, and every day it's just like a must to
stop. Go see the fish
She has
tank.
to go see the 2 fish.
It's a really cute space, and I'm happy we found it. And it just goes to show, like there are blessings in a lot of the little catastrophes that are happening.
That's right. I almost think we don't even need to send her to daycare. If we just got a fish tank in the house, she'd just stare at it all day.
Honestly, when we get the townhouse and we get the next place, I want a fish tank.
Wow.
They're not going to get a cat.
No, they're not going to get pets.
They're not going to get pets.
I can't help but remember when your father told you to take care of his 3 blue fish. It was like Troy Aikman.
Well, that's because it was in his basement.
Tony Romo.
And I wasn't living there.
And Emmett Smith.
Yeah.
And what happened to his 3 blue fish?
They died, but it wasn't my fault. It was my fault. But I wasn't living there. They weren't top priority.
We'll see about the fish. We're not good at, to be fair, we've never taken good care of anything before we had children. Remember all the bamboo plants that we killed?
Oh my gosh, I do not have a green
fish
thumb.
that you killed at your parents' house. We were just like, man, Kim, I don't know. Like, I feel like the universe is trying to tell us something. But, our 2 kids have turned out all right.
They're all right.
We're getting spooky today, babe.
Ooh.
It's spooky time. It's not October, but we're getting spooky. Today we're talking about...
We should re-release this one in October.
Fear factor. We're talking about fear specifically in communication. We've said this time and time again. We talked about this in our very first episode, but communication is a pillar of a successful
100%.
marriage.
Yes.
Correct?
If you're not talking, you're walking.
I like that.
I was like...
I didn't like...
He didn't respond.
I didn't audibly respond. I had to process it, but
he didn't respond the way I wanted him to.
You really tried to play on some words there, and that was beautiful.
I wanted him to be like, "Oh," I just came up with that one.
All right, full transparency. We did just have to cut right there because sometimes I say things that come to the top of my head, and it's not always appropriate, and we had to cut that. So we are talking about fear. So what I was saying is we've talked about this time and time again, right? Communication is a pillar to marriage. And in our very first episode ever, we talked about divorce. We said how affairs are the number one reason, but communication and money,
mainly around money,
right, is like the next up number one reason, number two reason why people walk away from their relationship. And I can't help but think it's these 5 fears that we're going to talk about today, like these fears in communication that cause people to walk away because they're too afraid of what might happen if they try to communicate.
And listen, if you're not in Graham Fam, there is an episode that you need to listen to if you're like, wow, this is a really good episode that I need to know more about communication. So the Safe Place episode, where we talk very extensively as to why this is so important, is kind of like a preemptive, or proactive, I should say, way to keep these fears from coming up. It takes everything takes intentional action. Like, I don't know how to I'm sorry, that's not as sexy as you want it to be. Everything takes intentional action, intentional saying like, okay, we want to make this marriage work. We need to work on communication. Even if you're good at communication, we want to ensure that communication stays strong. So we need to make it a goal to continue to have these hard conversations, even if there's nothing to talk about, because you can, as soon as you wrap your mind around the idea that you're like, we talk, we're fine, we don't have anything to worry about, so we don't need to work on our communication or work on our marriage. The moment you have that mentality is the moment when things start going wrong and you go, when did it happen? When did we grow apart? And it's that intentional, like, checking in. We need to put each other first. We need to have this camaraderie with each other because we are friends, we are partners, we are team. Once you do that, you won't get into the point where you're like, how did we get here?
Right. You always have to cultivate your marriage, right? If you stop watering a plant, it's going to die. You got to trim it. You got to take care of it.
Yeah.
And I love that I used a plant analogy because we suck at plants.
We
gotta
I was going to say that, wow,
marriage.
Great.
All right. Here's the first
Glad
fear.
we communicate better than we take care of plants.
Yeah. I mean, you got to do something well. So our first fear that we want to talk about today is the fear. Remember, these are all based in communication.
Yeah.
Fear of not being heard or understood by one's partner. Now, this fear to me, Kim, I get this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Fear of not being heard or understood, because I've seen some of y'all's social media posts, and some of y'all have some very, very, very strong, unwavering beliefs.
Right.
And if you see someone who has a different belief,
you shut them down.
You shut them down, or you go at it.
And you say, unfriend, unfollow.
So when you belittle people who are different and your spouse sees that that's the way that you react on social media, or maybe you don't react that way on social media, but to your spouse, to your safe place, you're like, oh my gosh. And you just go off on this other person because of something that they enjoy or something that they believe, a value that they have, a cultural difference, whatever it may be.
Right.
You go off on this person and your spouse sees it, they hear it, and then maybe your spouse has one of these values, or maybe your spouse, later on, starts to believe something or wants to talk to you about something that they want to do, and they're too afraid to have the conversation because they already know how you're going to react. So this is a real fear, the fear of not being heard or understood by one's partner. One
of the things that I feel like I just now thought of is also culturally fear of being not understood by one's partner. If you have different cultural differences, that you were brought up differently as a result of what your family's belief, values, and even bringing those two together. Yes, you love each other. Yes, you want to be with each other. That's your best friend that you're talking to. But when it comes to maybe child rearing, when it comes to education, when it comes to, money, there can be a lot of cultural rules and perspectives that you might not be familiar with. And because of what you know, because of what the spouse or whatever you might be saying, this has to happen, this is the way it has to be, this is the way that they've grown up, so this is what I have to follow, it can be hard. There's a fear of, if I bring this up, am I honoring him and his or her upbringing? If I bring this up, I'm not bringing honor to their culture. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so there's a lot of fear that goes into that you might be like trying to battle. So I think there's some other stuff where it is very much like, okay, we're kind of talking from the perspective, I think commonly, of two people who maybe have similar backgrounds, who, are in a relationship and they're just not talking about money, or they're just not talking about these things, right? But there's also that side of things too, where you might be coming from two different worlds culturally, and there's fear there too.
Right. So fear of not being heard or not being understood, right?
Hey, this is Kim Graham from the Affluent Marriage Podcast. We hope you're enjoying what you're listening to so far. But if you're thinking to yourself, man, I wish I knew more about what's going on in Kim and Dan's world, I want to ask some specific questions and be able to get extra resources, well, you might want to think about joining the Graham fam.
Now, I know I love exclusive content and I love having more of Kim in my life. And if that's something you're interested in, you can be a subscriber and you can get exclusive episodes that no one else is going to hear, that's going to help you build generational wealth and have more authentic two-way communication.
Links are down in the show description. You'll be able to click and see more information about Graham Fam, and we hope to see you behind the scenes. Have a great one, and let's get back to the show.
But people are dismissive of differences. Why? Because different can be uncomfortable, right? When something is different than you're used to, it's not your norm, it can be uncomfortable, and change is hard.
Yeah.
So try to take your mindset and shift your perspective so that it makes sense in line with what the other person is believing, or so. Like it's hard to make those changes. So, I guess I'm saying from the perspective of, there's the spouse who's afraid to communicate, and then there's the other spouse that maybe is, wavering in their beliefs. They're not going to understand. It's because change is hard, right? If we look at why they're unwilling to listen or to change, it's because what they believe is what they believe, and they don't have an open mind.
Yeah. And I think that's a different kind of perspective. I guess we're open-minded people. And I know that not everyone is.
But that takes practice, right?
That takes practice to
close-minded, open-minded, right? It's not like I was born closed-minded and I can't be open-minded, or I was born open-minded and I can't be, like, that's something that you have to practice and work on, right? And that goes back to being in school, right? Like, you sat in a group and you listened to other people share, their opinions, share their disagreements, and you did it respectfully. And you took turns and you listened and you let them say their piece, and then you said that's something that you practice as a child. So if you're struggling with that as an adult, then you probably didn't nurture that as a child, but that doesn't mean it's too late for you.
That's true. Because even in school, we are taught, like, you can listen to somebody and you don't, completely disagree. We try to find points that we agree with, and also find points that we say we respectfully disagree. Those are definitely like school, objectives that we learn, and habits, communication, I guess, habits that we learn. Because we're trying to find a harmonious way for our classroom and for our students to be able to communicate with each other. So I definitely think that, something must happen down the line as you get a little bit older, where your mind gets more closed. So you kind of have to think you know what? Hold on. Let me go back. Because our kids, like, if you put kids in a room full of other kids, they will find best friends in seconds. And they won't even know, like, they won't even care where you came from, what color you are. Like, they just go, oh, you like purple? I like purple too. And then you just go for it. You can play. I mean, kids of all different types of, places can come together, and they just love them, right? So something happens down the line, experiences that we've had, our upbringing, maybe the media that has changed the way that you view seeing or hearing other perspectives that has caused you to be hard towards that. And you're bringing that into your marriage, where when your spouse is telling you something that is, important to them, that is a differing viewpoint, that is, challenging some of the things that you've always done, when it becomes uncomfortable, that is when the closed-mindedness comes in and you immediately shut down. That's something you've got to recognize and investigate for yourself. And this is the point where we say, it's okay to seek help.
Absolutely. Because we've been there, we've done that, and we encourage that. Yeah, I know it's easy to say things like this, but this is the truth, right? If you don't speak up, you won't be heard, right? So if you're afraid of not being heard, you're afraid of them not understanding, you're never going to know.
You're never going to know.
Unless you take that chance, you take that risk, and you have that conversation with your spouse, right? Action beats inaction.
Yeah.
Right? So it is a fear. I get that it can be debilitating. It can be really challenging, and it's easy to say, but you have to take that step.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but there are things that you can do to make this conversation a little bit easier. So speaking of action, tell me about your favorite Susan Jeffers quote, Kim.
It's so funny because you seem to say that often, that I have like a favorite Susan Jeffers quote.
I feel like there's a Post-it in your room.
It's not a Post-it. This is really funny. This is funny. Okay, so on this podcast and on this YouTube, you're going to see his reaction in real time when I tell him this. Okay, so you looked at my desktop one day.
Yes.
And I told him that I made this desktop.
Yes.
Wallpaper, and it had the quote from Susan Jeffers that says, "Feel the fear and do it anyway."
Yes.
Fun fact.
Because it's your favorite.
I was on Canva and there were some Post-it thing on that background that I created that, yes, those are quotes that I created. That "feel the fear and do it anyway" was just a part of the template. I had no idea.
Stop.
I did not know. I was like, who was Susan Jeffers?
No.
It's your favorite quote. And I'm like, I have no idea.
My mind is absolutely shattered, like beyond blown.
And you keep bringing it up. It's just like the second time you brought it up in the podcast series. And I'm like, I don't know why he thinks I love this quote so much.
We have both read Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and Susan Jeffers is like quoted in this. And I thought that this moment was like a pinnacle moment in your reading experience of this book. And now I come to find out that it's just a standard wallpaper that had her name and her quote on it.
Yep, that part was just a standard like template. Wow. I added stuff onto it, but I just did it around the quote because I thought, oh, that's a cool quote. But I didn't think anything of it like...
Oh my gosh, Kim, I thought that this...
I know.
I've got to return our anniversary gift. Like I got a bracelet that had that engraved on it. No.
That's
wow.
So funny.
Okay. Well, you know what? I don't care.
Now
it is
my favorite.
It is now your favorite quote.
My favorite
quote. You must own that.
I will own it. Susan Jeffers. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Do it anyway. With all fears, right? They can be debilitating, but you have to push through. You got to find a way to push through, because if you don't, you're never going to conquer that fear.
Yeah. I can tell you something that I did that was fearful today. I know this is going to sound really stupid and have nothing to do necessarily with money, but it does have something to do with business. And I feel like I had a moment where I recognized, oh my gosh, I'm scared of this. This is how my clients feel. And I love when I do that because it just puts me in their shoes for a hot second. And I'm like, wow, it is hard when you're trying something new or trying something that's outside of your comfort zone for the first time. It can feel very you can be full of fear. So I've been trying to do this, routine of during my business of like connecting with people and networking with people, which is really easy for me to do in person, but online it's just not my favorite thing to do. I don't want to come across as sleazy. There's a whole background to it, right? Which we'll get to this soon.
Yes,
this is exactly where this comes from, right? So I took the time today, I set myself a timer and I was like, okay, I recognize that I am procrastinating from doing this task because I just don't want to put myself out there. I need to set myself a timer for 30 minutes and I am going to just go out there and start talking to people online. And I remember setting the timer for today. And for the first 5 minutes, I just stared. I was in like a group that I'm paying for, a subscription group. And I literally just stared and I was like, where do I start? What do I even do? How do I have conversation? Like, it was really like, then I just had to just like dive in. And like, I had to think about it like every post is like a door to a party that I'm going to. And I can decide if I want to go in that party and open the door, or if I don't like the topic and I just want to go to another place. And that's how I had to experience for myself. But I did it. But I was so scared and I was like, oh, this is going nowhere. I just feel like, this is like that feel the fear. Like the biggest mistake most people make is waiting for the feeling of fear to subside or disappear before they're willing to act. It will never happen. I am 4 years almost, 3.5 into my business, and I'm still afraid of certain parts of my business, but I have to just push through because I know that that's where I'm going to get the growth that I want.
Right. I'm 34 years old, and if I see a snake, I don't give a gram. You're taking care of it. Like I will handle bugs, insects, spiders. I'll smack those things and squish them with my hand. I could care less, but show me a snake. No, I'm running.
We're both running. You show him a bear and I'm going to laugh at you.
Right. And
it's like, I'll run too.
I don't do snakes. I don't do bears. Those are the two things I don't do. I don't care. Make fun of me. So what? I'm not going to the woods.
Feel the fear.
You can't make me go into the wild.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Born in the suburbs, die in the suburbs.
Oh my gosh.
The story of Daniel Graham. All right. Number 2. Fear of conflict or disagreement that could lead to a breakdown in the relationship. So some people are so afraid to communicate in their relationship because they're afraid that it's going to cause a conflict that's going to break down their relationship. I wonder if this is a fear that comes from young relationships, or do you think this comes from even aged relationships?
I feel like it could be...
we've been together for 21, almost 22 years. Like, is this something like, could a conversation, I guess, depending on the weight of the conversation.
It's true.
Right.
I feel like when it comes to conflict or disagreement, I think it really depends on, I think that's something that happens from when you were growing up, right? If you had, or if you saw someone have conflict or disagreement and someone you love was in a conversation with someone and they were conflicting or having a disagreement and they were yelled at or they were belittled or they were just treated unfairly and you could tell the other person was hurt, you could harbor those feelings of, oh, wow, like I don't want that to happen to me. And then as you grow up, you start saying, I'm afraid or I don't like conflict because I don't want to be as a part of that. So I think either one of two things can happen. You could be the person who tries to be the louder or the most boisterous person in the conversation because you want to win, because you want to be that person that's more powerful. Or you could be that person who avoids, is quiet, is timid, and is just like, I don't necessarily need to have this conversation. I will avoid it at all costs.
Just get walked over. Yeah, I think conversations can I'm just thinking of examples in my head, like maybe, later down the road in your relationship, like way down the road, like maybe one spouse wants to have, their mother or their father live in the home with them. And the other spouse isn't with it. And you're like, well, my mom is getting older, my dad's getting older. Like I don't want them in a retirement home. Like I want them to live with us. Like that could be, a hard conversation,
right?
Where there could be a conflict. It could be a breakdown in the relationship. Or maybe, in those early years of your marriage, like one spouse is all about having a big family and the other spouse doesn't want kids at all.
Right.
Right. Like that can be a tough conversation, that there could be, dripping in fear and, there could be a breakdown in the relationship. Yeah, those are tough. So
those are big conversations.
It doesn't matter, which is my point. It doesn't matter if it's early in your relationship or late in your relationship. Like this fear can still exist.
Right.
You're never too far past this fear from coming up.
Yeah.
So you're someone even from early years, like you're not a big fan of conflict.
I'm not. I don't like conflict. I like for everyone to get together and be happy.
Sing kumbaya.
Sing kumbaya. I did the Strengths Finder. Did you do Strengths Finder when you were in school?
I did not enter
weren't
the
there that
county.
time?
Your last, like that year or two before you went in before me, like that was like the last couple of years before
So
StrengthsFinder was Deuces.
StrengthsFinder is a really, really great thing if you've never done it before. It's kind of like you know how some people are doing like this whole
I've done knockoff versions. I've done like Aldi
embodying-
versions
Aldi
of
versions.
StrengthsFinders.
So basically, it's just a really long quiz or something like that, and it tells you more so like what your strengths are. And it tells you basically the whole philosophy is to focus on your strengths as opposed to your weaknesses. So as you're putting teams together, you're putting strengths and strengths together and focusing on that as opposed to, you know, putting someone in a place that it doesn't fit them. So it's a really good, you know, thing for team building and stuff like that. And one of mine is harmony. And it's all about like, I want to bring people together. I'm all about melding relationships. I want people to speak kindly to one another.
Ivory.
Yeah.
Living in perfect
harmony. It's us.
It's us. Who's that couple?
It's us. So yeah, like it's all of that. So I'm very much a harmonious type of person. So when I see conflict, I don't like it. I remember my parents, and they did not argue in the least bit, but my parents would be having heated debates, we'll call it, where they're just playing with each other and like talking loudly, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, are you guys getting divorced? Like that was the thing that I ran to. One extreme to another, and my parents were like, no.
This makes so much sense to our marriage now. Like you jump to these like extreme conclusions.
I do. I jump to extremes because
Guys, we're all learning together today.
We're all learning together.
Susan Jeffers was just a wallpaper. My wife has childhood experiences where she jumps to extreme conclusions.
Yes.
Like, wow. Thank you for learning and growing with me today.
Absolutely. So I think that like that came into our marriage. I remember a distinctive moment where my husband raised his voice. He did not yell. He's never yelled in our 9 years of marriage. We never 9 years of dating. Sorry. We never had a fight or anything like that. That was like really bad or like whatever. We got married, and he, at one point in our first year of marriage, raised his voice at me. I don't even know if it was in anger. I don't even remember what it was about. But I remember I had enough of the wherewithal, because of the foundation we had, at least this is my friend or whatever, that I was like, you can't do that. I won't respond to you. Like I will shut down and I will cry if you yell at me. So I just want you to know that if you ever want to talk to me about something seriously, I need you to talk to me. Don't yell at me. And that was it. That was the last time.
Right. And that's where I kind of talked about school before, right? If you can't talk to someone without yelling or screaming or raising your voice, then you probably don't know how to have a respectful conversation or a respectful disagreement, right?
Yeah.
So let's if you don't know this, this is like your first time listening, right? Kimberly taught in education for almost 10 years before stepping away to become a financial coach, which she is now doing very well.
Thank you, babe.
I'm still in the system, and I've been teaching for almost...
we gonna get you out,
Thanks,
bro.
boo. I've been in for almost 15 years. I make it sound like prison. I've been in the clank for like almost 15 years now. So we have a massive background in education. So here's what you need to do, right? When you're having a disagreement with your partner, all right? You need to validate their thoughts, right? You need to reiterate what they say and then respectfully disagree and state your case in a civil manner. So, hey, I see this is what you're thinking. These are your thoughts. Like, I see where you're coming from. I see why you say that based on your background and your history and, you know, what you stand for. Like, I see that. And what you're saying is this. You're saying blah, 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 right? You've restated, you've, validated, you've made them feel heard.
Validated that you just listened to them.
Then you say, but respectfully, I disagree with that. And I'm not yelling. I'm just saying, dude, respectfully, I disagree. And here's my take. Here's why I say that. And that's it, right? This is what we teach kindergartners to do. You say, I respectfully disagree. You state your case. They listen, then they respond. You listen. And you have this civil back and forth. There's no yelling. There's no raised voices.
And I know there's some people who are probably listening to this kind of laughing like, oh my gosh, how does this work with kids? we do it with our kids too. Like our kids will, like today, like Peyton got really upset because we went to the tennis courts because it was empty to have them.
This is our 2-year-old, by the way.
Ride their scooter, the one that like, destroys things. So she was just using her scooter, and I mentioned that we were going to go to the playground. And as we were going back, they just kept having these like pit stops of like falling or crying or just lots of pit stops because, kids. And so when I came back, I had to go to a meeting and I said, I'm sorry, honey, we're not going to be able to go. And she cried and had her 2-year-old tantrum. I made sure she got all cleaned up and whatever. And I was like, I understand that you're upset, right? I didn't yell at her, right? As much as frustrating as it is to see her have a 2-year-old tantrum, I'm like, okay, well, I get it. She's upset. I'd be upset too. If you told me I was going to go to the park and then you switched your mind, like I'd be upset too. And so, like I needed to make sure she knew, like, I understand that you're upset. What we do is we try to encourage our kids to use their words to tell me how they're feeling as opposed to just screaming at my face. Right. So, use your words. How are you feeling? What are you upset about? Can you say it? Mommy, I'm upset. I'm upset because I wanted to go to the park. And I said, well, do you understand why we can't go? We can't go because you have a meeting, which I know sounds horrible, but they understand that that's just a part of what mommy has to do and what daddy has to do.
They should be thankful they got to go outside.
Right. And I said, let's talk about 3 things that we did that were really good. Like we work through those emotions of how to have a civil discourse or, like disagreement. I know but you said, I understand what I said, and I'm sorry that we had to switch things. Perhaps we can go tomorrow. And that does take more time. And in the same way that as you're an adult talking to another adult who should understand how to have a conversation, I'm talking to a 2-year-old, right? Adults should be able to understand, like, I hear this person, I validate this person. I'm not happy with what's been said, but here's what I'm thinking right now. That's how you have a conversation. But there's a fear that in that conflict, that what if the person has less respect for me? What if that person isn't going to allow me to have the time to say my piece without interrupting me? Like there's so many things that come into place.
Hey guys, this is Kim Graham, co-host of the Affluent Marriage Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed your episode so far. And I know that you're like, wait, hold on, there's more here. And there is. It's in the next episode. We hope that you guys are going to join us over there. And in the meantime, if you're waiting, join us on Instagram at the Affluent Marriage Pod, because we'd love to connect with you, converse with you. We want you guys to message us, see how you're doing and how you're enjoying the podcast. We want to hear all of those things, and we cannot wait to help you live in love and walk in wealth in the next episode. See you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.